What is the minimum gear when you travel like a landscape photographer? Let's discuss a few tips and a little bit in depth about this topic. Hello YouTubers, my name is Attila Mathe from Blue Sky Photography, and today I'd like to talk to you about a topic which is pretty important when you are a landscape photographer. I will divide these topics in a few videos because if you are a landscape photographer, it's different kind of gear that you will need, like if you are a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer. So the topic of today's video is what is the minimum gear what you have to bring with you when you are a landscape photographer and you are traveling in a different country or in a different place. So when you travel, there is always a trade-off, and believe me guys, it's true. I've been through this several times, and if you travel, you have to give up something for something. So I would say that you have to be very wise and you have to be very careful how you decide what you bring with you and what you leave at home, because you might end up, in a necessity of something and you decided to leave it at home. So that's why I did this video, to share my experience with you guys and my opinion, and a few tips. So I made a few notes over here just not to forget. So let's see a few tips. What would I bring with me if I would be a landscape photographer and I would travel? First of all, a camera with highest resolution possible. Now, why do I say highest resolution possible? Because it's a good thing if you are able to crop in post-processing. So to be able to crop in post-processing, you need higher resolution possible. And when I mean highest resolution, I mean if you are in a crop system, then at least 24 megapixel. I don't think there is a higher resolution sensor, but it was the Samsung NX1 that was 28 megapixel, but unfortunately it's not anymore in the market. So a 24 megapixel sensor will be great. If you are in full frame, I would suggest 36 megapixel. It's even better. So what camera I would suggest? It depends really in what kind of system are you into. If you are a new photographer and you just want to get into landscape photography, I would suggest a Micro Four Thirds system, or if not, the crop system, APS-C size sensors. I wouldn't say that at the beginning you should jump into full frame. I think that if you want and if you have the money for it, that's no problem. That's okay, you can. But I think that Micro Four Thirds and APS-C size sensors, they are very, very capable. And there are a few other things what you have to know about full frame and high resolution. So if you don't know how to use them cameras, sometimes you will realize that even if you have a 36 megapixel full frame camera, your photos are not sharp. And this should be a different video, because otherwise this video would be too long. So I don't want to get into this topic. But anyway, if you have a high resolution 36 megapixel or higher 42 megapixel or 50 megapixel full frame sensor, you must be prepared that you have to know how to handle the camera to get sharp photos. Now, let's stay just here, and the first tip is a camera with the highest resolution possible. Second tip, wide angle lenses and one telephoto zoom. Now, why do I say one telephoto zoom? Maybe some other people will ask, okay, telephoto, it's not for landscape. It's true in one sense, but believe me, I was in the situation when I had the wide angle lenses with me. On that time I was with the Sony E-mount system, and I wanted to shoot something. I wanted to get in a little bit, get closer. And I couldn't because I had no telephoto zoom with me. So I had to do it at home in post-processing. That was okay because I had the Sony A7R with me, which was 36 megapixel, but in the same time, when I cropped the photo, which one could have been 36 megapixel, it was only about 15 or 16 megapixel because I had to crop in. So if you have a telephoto lens with you, a telephoto zoom lens, it will help you in a lot of situations, believe me. It might not be necessary all the time, but if you need it, it's there. So that's why I would suggest to get a telephoto as well with you. Now, in regard to wide angle lenses, why do I say in plural, so multiple lenses? Because I am kind of fan of the prime lenses. So I like zoom lenses. I use zoom lenses. I have actually three zoom lenses, but mostly I like to use prime, especially in landscape photography or portrait. When you have all the time, then you just you can walk further or forward or backward, if you want to frame the subject, it's okay. So I would use primes as much as possible. Now, wide angle prime lenses, they are not very expensive because well, they are expensive if you want with fast aperture, but if you are a landscape photographer, you don't really need a fast aperture prime. I don't say that that's not useful. It is useful, but if you don't have the money for it, don't worry, because most of the time you won't need it. Most of the time you will stop down the lens anyway. So you don't really need a fast aperture prime. That's why I say if you have an f2.8 prime, that is more than enough for you most of the time. If you have an f4, that's enough most of the time as well, so it's not a big issue at all. If you want fast wide primes, like 1.8 or 1.4, that's okay, but they are more expensive, so you have to know. And you might find it helpful in some situations, but most of the time you will stop down the lens anyway. So in regards to lenses, a few wide angle lenses and one telephoto zoom. Now, tip number 3, wireless or cable remote controller. Yes, maybe some people will say, yes, you can use the 2-second timer. I know, but I don't really like it. It might be only me. It's maybe only my opinion, but I don't like the 2-second timer. I use this, they are not expensive, this wireless, controllers, wireless controllers. So I use these wireless controllers, and they are not expensive. They are pretty cheap on eBay. You can buy, with a few euros. That's not a big issue. Okay, tip number 4, and this is pretty important. Good quality ND filter kit. Now, if you are a landscape photographer, you want to have a good quality ND filter. And this is this is not something what you can, I don't need it for the moment. No. If you are a landscape photographer, if you want to be a landscape photographer, you need a good quality ND filter kit. And when I mean good quality, I mean not these cheap plastic kits, you need something which is image quality wise excellent. And they are pretty pricey, unfortunately. So you might end up, spending like 300-400 euro. But I tell you something, when you have a look on your pictures, you will justify that price. So it will be very important on your photos, because if you put a cheap plastic filter in the front of your lens, even if your lens is great image quality, produces great image quality, the filter will destroy the image quality of the lens. So that's why you need a great ND filter kit. Tip number 5, circular polarizer filter. This is something again where many photographers will argue, and they will say you need it, the other ones they say you don't need it. I tell you something, personally myself, I don't really use circular polarizers, but I have in my bag. And I tell you why. There are some situations when you need the circular polarizer. And if you have something very shiny, like a car or a pond, with water or something, you need the circular polarizers. If you don't have the circular polarizer, your picture will look nasty, I tell you. If you have it, you can reduce the shininess, of the car or of the pond, and you can have much better photos. I tell you, it's it's kind of, in some situations, you need very much. In certain situations, you don't need at all. So it's, at the end of the day, it's up to you, but I tell you that circular polarizer filter is very important as well. Now, tip number 6, sturdy but not too heavy tripod. Again, some people, they will say, oh, I just buy a 20 euro tripod, and yeah, it's true, it will hold your camera, that's not an issue. The issue is, if you have a light tripod, a very, very light and bad quality tripod, when there is the smallest wind, it will move your camera. You need a sturdy tripod, and not too heavy, but sturdy tripod. So if you put your camera on the tripod, and even if a little bit wind is, over there, it won't move your camera. So that's why I would suggest to get a sturdy tripod, which is not too heavy in the same time, because you have to carry with you, obviously. But you can put your bag on it. You can. There are in most of the tripods, there are this small little hook, and then you can just put your backpack on it, just to add some extra weight to the tripod. But I would suggest to have a look, and if you are a landscape photographer, then to invest some money in a sturdy and good quality tripod. Tip number 7, extra cards. Believe me, it is important, because I was in the situation when I ran out of cards and I just couldn't take some pictures, and I knew that it will be very long time since until I will get back again to that place, and I started to delete my photos, which one I didn't need it, from the cards, just to make some little space over there to be able to do some shots. So extra cards are very, very important to be with you. Tip number 8, extra battery. Again, something what you might say that, this battery will be enough for me. No, you always must have at least 1 or 2 extra batteries. And they are not very expensive, so better prepare yourself from the beginning. Tip number 9, and this is again something that I don't really hear people talking about on YouTube, and I would say it's really important. And this is to have a good and reliable GPS if you are on new ground, if you are in different country. I tell you something, you can get lost. And fortunately, I wasn't in this kind of situation, because most of the time you can have your phone, and if you have your phone, or you have, I don't know, a tablet or something, if you have with you and that has a GPS, then you can find your way back. But what if you don't have signal? What if you don't have coverage, mobile coverage? What's going on then? So I tell you something, in many cases when you are a landscape photographer, you are climbing in the mountains, you are going in the forest, and your mobile coverage might go away. So you need a good and reliable GPS, because you can simply just get lost, I tell you. And if you get lost, it can be dangerous. Now, I don't know, in some parts, of Europe, or even in United States, it's okay if you spend the night in the forest, but I tell you something, in some parts of Europe and some parts of the world, it is pretty dangerous if you have to spend the night in the forest and out in the wilderness. So it's a good idea to have a good and reliable GPS. Tip number 10, insure your gear. Again, this is something which many photographers will say, yes, I spend a lot of money on insurance, so I better not insure, and then if I lose my gear, then I buy a new one. It's up to you. It depends, how important is your gear and how much it costs, your gear. If your gear is about 10,000 euro, obviously you want to insure it. If it's only like 2,000 euro, maybe you take the risk and you don't insure it. But it's up to you totally. I would say it is pretty important. Tip number 11, and this is again important. Always tell someone where are you going and how long, especially if you are in a different country. Now, you think that this is pointless maybe, but it's not. Because you can go out in the forest, you can break your leg by accident, you don't have phone coverage, Maybe people, maybe that place is not so popular, so people are not walking, you know, over there all the time, so nobody finds you. What do you do? Like, you know, how do you handle the situation? So if somebody knows where are you going and how long you stay there, if they see that you are not at home, you know, they start to search for you. But if you don't say, nobody knows where to start to search, sorry. So it is very, very important to say to someone, to your friend, to your sister, to your brother, to your parents, whoever, tell them where are you going and how long you will be there. It is really, really important if you go out in the wilderness, I tell you. Okay, tip number 12. Always bring your gear up in the airplane if you travel with the airplane. Again, it happened with me that I was in the airport and the officer, you know, in the airport, he told me that bag is going down, you know, with all the bags. And I said, no, it's not going down because this bag has many thousands of euros worth of gear, so that this bag will come up with me in the airplane. He wanted, you know, to put the bag down in the airplane because there was no space. But I told him, look, I have seat. I bought my seats, you know, like when I booked my ticket, I also booked seats. So if I booked my seats, you know, I have the right to bring up my bag with me. Even if you don't have booked seats, even then you have the right. But if you book your seats, then you have more rights to bring your bag up in the airplane. So he was a little bit, you know, like he didn't want to, but actually at the end of the day, you know, I had the right to do it. So I didn't. I tell you something, you don't want to be too arrogant or too ignorant with the airport personnel, but in the same time you must show them that you have your right to do it, and you do it. Because if they put your bag down with all the luggages, you know, you don't want to know what's going to happen with your gear. They take that, they threw away, they threw here, there, you know, they don't handle with care. So if you have many cameras and lenses in there which worth many thousands of dollars or euros, you must be sure that your gear is safe, and you must bring with you up in the airplane. So these were a few tips, what I would do and what I do when I travel and when I shoot landscapes. Now, if I travel and I shoot landscapes, I try my best to keep my gear as light as possible and as effective as possible. So I try to choose the cameras and the lenses I bring with me, you know, to reduce the weight as much as possible. And this is pretty difficult. It depends on what kind of system are you into. If you are in Micro Four Thirds, you know, or mirrorless camera systems, that's not a big issue for you because your gear is smaller. But because I am with Nikon, I end up most of the time using my Panasonic cameras, you know, but that's okay, you know, because they are very good cameras. And I tell you something, if you think that I left something out of this video, please feel free and leave a comment down below, and please help others, you know, to understand and to help them to get a few tips how to do it. I'm only a human being, so I can make mistakes as well. This is only my experience, and if you think that you can add something to it, please feel free and do it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and share my videos. Other than that, I wish you a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.